Billionaire offers Waitress $1 million to quit her job. Her reply leaves him speechless. What if a single conversation could change everything you believed about success and happiness? Claire Martinez wiped down the same corner booth for the third time that evening, her tired hands moving in familiar circles across the worn formica. At 36, she'd been serving coffee and comfort food at Murphy's Diner for nearly 15 years, watching customers come and go while her own dreams seemed to fade with each passing year. The autumn rain drummed against the windows, creating rivulets that caught the warm glow of the neon sign outside. She didn't notice the expensive black sedan that pulled into the nearly empty parking lot, or the man in the tailored suit who stepped carefully around puddles as he approached the glass door. James Richardson had built an empire worth $3 billion, but tonight he looked like any other weary traveler seeking shelter from the storm. Little did either of them know that the next hour would shatter everything they thought they understood about what truly matters in life. "Where are you watching from tonight?" The brass bell above the door chimed softly as James entered, shaking droplets from his coat. Claire looked up from behind the counter, offering the same warm smile she'd perfected over years of late-night shifts. "Welcome to Murphy's," she said, her voice carrying genuine kindness despite her exhaustion. "Sit anywhere you'd like, honey." He chose a booth near the window, sliding across the cracked vinyl seat while glancing around the modest diner. Everything here seemed untouched by time: the checkered floor tiles, the handwritten menu board, the photos of longtime customers covering one entire wall. Claire approached with a steaming pot of coffee, automatically flipping his cup right side up. "Rough night?" she asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. James nodded, surprised by her perceptiveness. "Something like that," he murmured. As she poured, he caught sight of the small nameplate pinned to her uniform and the calluses on her hands that spoke of countless hours of honest work. "Claire, is it?" She smiled, tucking a strand of graying hair behind her ear. "That's right. Been here so long, some folks think I came with the furniture." Over the next 20 minutes, James found himself drawn into easy conversation. Claire moved between his table and her other duties with practiced grace, refilling his cup and sharing stories about the diner's colorful history. She spoke of Mrs. Henderson, who came in every Tuesday for apple pie and memories of her late husband, and young Danny, who studied for his college exams in the back booth every night after his construction job. "This place has seen 3 generations of families," Claire said with pride. "Some of my regulars, I've watched their babies grow up and have babies of their own." James studied her face as she spoke, seeing something he'd forgotten existed in his world of boardrooms and profit margins: genuine contentment. "Don't you ever want more?" he asked suddenly. The question hung in the air between them. Claire paused, considering. "More what?" she replied softly. Before James could answer, his phone buzzed with yet another urgent message from his assistant. The reminder of his outside world felt jarring here, like a discordant note in a peaceful symphony. He looked at Claire, then at the phone, feeling a strange pull he couldn't quite name. James silenced his phone and studied Claire more intently. "What I mean is," he continued carefully, "don't you ever think about leaving all this behind? Traveling the world, buying whatever you want, never having to worry about money again." Claire laughed, a sound as warm as the coffee she poured. "Mister, you sound like someone who's got plenty of money but might be missing something else entirely." Her words hit closer to home than James expected. "I'm James Richardson," he said quietly, watching for recognition in her eyes. When none came, he felt oddly relieved. "I own Richardson Industries." Claire nodded politely, but clearly the name meant nothing to her. In her world of regular customers and modest tips, billionaires were as foreign as astronauts. "That sounds important," she said kindly, topping off his coffee again. James leaned forward, his voice taking on the tone he used in crucial negotiations. "Claire, what if I told you I could change your life tonight? What if I offered you enough money to never have to work another day, to buy a house anywhere you wanted, to travel and see everything you've dreamed of?" Claire's hand stilled on the coffee pot handle. "What exactly are you saying?" she asked, her tone shifting slightly. $1 million, James said, his eyes fixed on hers. "Cash. Tomorrow. All you have to do is walk away from this place and never look back. The diner seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Claire set the coffee pot down slowly, her mind reeling. $1 million. She thought of her tiny apartment above the hardware store, the bills that kept her awake at night, the dreams she'd tucked away like old photographs. But then she looked around the diner, at Mrs. Henderson's favorite booth, at the wall of family photos, at the coffee-stained order pad where she'd written down thousands of simple requests over the years. "You want me to abandon the people who depend on me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The folks who come here not just for food, but for someone who remembers how they like their eggs, who asks about their grandchildren, who listens when they need to talk?" If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. James watched the emotions play across her face, realizing he'd stepped into something far more complex than a simple business transaction. What would Claire's answer be, and why did it suddenly matter so much to a man who thought he had everything? Claire walked to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked street where James's expensive car gleamed under the streetlight. $1 million. The number echoed in her mind like a prayer and a curse all at once. She thought about her mother's medical bills, the ones she'd been paying off slowly for 3 years since the cancer treatment. She thought about her daughter Jessica, working 2 jobs to put herself through nursing school while raising Claire's grandson alone after her husband left. "You don't understand," she said finally, turning back to James. "This isn't just a job to me. When Mr. Murphy was dying, he made me promise to keep this place alive. He said it was the heart of the neighborhood, the one place where everyone was family." Her voice cracked slightly. "I've got customers who eat here because it's the only place they can afford a hot meal. I've got elderly folks who come in just so someone will talk to them. You're asking me to turn my back on all of that for money?" James felt something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. "But think about your own family," he pressed. "Your own future. With that money, you could help more people than you ever could slinging coffee." Claire's eyes flashed. "You think because you've got money, you understand what really helps people?" When Mrs. Patterson lost her husband last winter, did money hold her hand while she cried into her coffee? When teenage Kevin was thinking about dropping out of school, did a check talk him through his troubles every night for 2 months until he got back on track? "That's noble," James said, his businessman's instincts kicking in, "but nobility doesn't pay the bills." The words sounded hollow, even to him, as soon as they left his mouth. Claire studied his face with the kind of perception that came from years of reading people's hearts. "When's the last time you had a conversation like this?" she asked gently. "When's the last time someone looked you in the eye and saw James the person, not Richardson Industries?" The question hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they wanted to cross. James realized that in the past 5 years, every conversation had been about deals, profits, or strategy. Even his ex-wife had eventually seen only dollar signs when she looked at him. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. In this modest diner, with this waitress who didn't know his net worth, he felt more seen than he had in years. But Claire was wrestling with her own demons, and the weight of decision was crushing her from both sides. James watched Claire's internal struggle and felt something shift inside him. The rain had stopped, and moonlight now streamed through the diner windows, casting everything in a softer light. "You're testing me, aren't you?" Claire said suddenly, her eyes narrowing with realization. "This isn't really about the money at all." James's carefully constructed facade cracked. "What do you mean?" he asked, though his voice betrayed him. "A man doesn't walk into a random diner at midnight and offer a stranger $1 million unless he's looking for something money can't buy," Claire said, moving closer. "You want to see if there's anyone left in this world who wouldn't sell their soul. You want to know if places like this, people like me, still exist." James felt exposed, as if she'd peered directly into his heart. "My company is buying this entire block," he admitted quietly. "The diner is scheduled for demolition in 6 months. I came here tonight to see what I was destroying." Claire's face went pale. "You're taking Murphy's away." It wasn't a question. James nodded, unable to meet her eyes. But I can make it worth your while. The $1 million stands. You can start fresh somewhere else, somewhere better. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. Somewhere better? You still don't get it, do you? She walked to the wall of photographs and touched one gently. A picture of her late husband in his army uniform, taken right here in this booth before his last deployment. This is where Tommy proposed to me 20 years ago. This is where I announced my pregnancy to my parents. This is where I came every morning after his funeral, because the people here held me up when I couldn't stand on my own. Tears slipped down her cheeks. You can't put a price on a lifetime of memories. James felt his world tilting. All his life, he'd believed everything could be quantified, bought, or sold. What if I don't buy the block? He whispered. What if I walk away from the deal? Claire turned to him with surprise. You'd do that? Give up millions in profit? For the first time all evening, James smiled genuinely. Maybe it's time I learned what's really valuable. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Claire reached across the space between them, not for his money or his promises, but simply to touch his hand with the kind of human connection he'd forgotten existed. The real question now was, could a billionaire truly change his ways? 3 months later, James Richardson stood before his board of directors with a decision that would change everything. I'm withdrawing from the downtown redevelopment project, he announced, watching their shocked faces. Instead, we're establishing the Murphy's Community Foundation, dedicated to preserving neighborhood gathering places across the city. The room erupted in protests, but James held up his hand. Sometimes the best investment isn't the one that shows immediate returns on paper. That evening, he returned to the diner where it all began. Claire greeted him with the same warm smile, but now it held recognition and something deeper, respect earned through actions rather than wealth. The usual, she asked, and James realized he had become exactly what he'd never expected, a regular customer who came not for business deals or networking, but for genuine human connection. I've been thinking about what you said that first night, James told her as she poured his coffee. About understanding what really helps people. Claire settled into the booth across from him, something she never would have done 3 months ago. And what did you figure out? He gestured around the diner, where Mrs. Henderson was sharing photos of her new great-grandchild, where teenage Kevin was showing off his acceptance letter to college, where a dozen small human dramas played out over cups of coffee and shared conversations. I figured out that wealth isn't about how much you can accumulate, James said thoughtfully. It's about how much you can give back to make the world a little warmer, a little kinder. Claire nodded, understanding passing between them like an old friendship. My mother used to say that we're only as rich as the love we leave behind. James had started coming in 3 times a week, not just for the coffee but for the community he'd never known he was missing. The foundation had already saved 4 other neighborhood establishments, each one a gathering place where people mattered more than profit margins. James had learned to measure success differently. In the number of elderly customers who had someone to talk to, in the teenagers who found mentorship over midnight snacks, in the families who marked their milestones in worn vinyl booths that held decades of memories. You know what the funny thing is? Claire said, refilling his cup one more time. You never did get your answer that first night. James smiled, understanding now what she meant. Actually, I did, he replied. You taught me that some things can't be bought because they're already priceless. As he prepared to leave, James left his usual tip, not extravagant, just fair, along with a small envelope containing photos of the latest community center the foundation had helped fund. Claire watched him walk to his car, no longer the lost billionaire who'd stumbled in from the rain, but a man who'd found his way home to what truly mattered. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovering that the richest moments in life are often found in the simplest places, shared with people who remind us of our own humanity.